Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A very busy show tonight. We'll bring you the latest on the tragic and sudden death of cricket legend Shane Warne. My Mark Meets guest is sacked Telegraph cartoonist Bob Moran, one of the few artists to speak out against lockdowns. The guy is a genius. Here is one of his brilliant efforts. Was he cancelled for having the wrong views? A fascinating story. Bob Moran is live in the studio at 10 o'clock. In the big question, should Britain go for a universal basic income, paying everybody a monthly wage? Plus, another great British game show and my alternative news headlines featuring Sir Gavin Williamson. The world's gone mad. Plus, my fantastic panel tonight. And after this, why won't the Labour Party grant GB News an interview? Have we been cancelled by the opposition? And it's time for Britain to get back to the office and save the economy. That's in my big opinion. In 2 minutes' time. First up, here are the headlines with me all evening, the brilliant Tamsin Roberts.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening from the GB newsroom. The US ambassador to the UN says the world narrowly averted a nuclear catastrophe after a fire broke out at a nuclear power plant in Ukraine. The Zaporizhzhia power station, the largest in Europe, caught fire after Russian forces battled for control of it. Boris Johnson's called Moscow's actions a direct threat to the safety of all of Europe. The Russian envoy to the UN says the plant is working normally and that the background radiation levels in the area are also normal. But Linda Thomas-Greenfield told an emergency UN meeting it's a dangerous new escalation.
Russia's attack last night put Europe's largest nuclear power at grave risk. It was incredibly reckless and dangerous, and it threatened the safety of civilians across Russia, Ukraine, and Europe.
The Metropolitan Police is gathering evidence in relation to alleged war crimes in Ukraine. It's in support of the International Criminal Court investigation. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Russia is using increasingly brutal methods against civilians. UK Defence Secretary Ben Wallace says Russia is playing with fire.
Russian armed forces has in its arsenal a whole range of horrors that go way beyond capabilities that we would choose to have if you're complying with Geneva Conventions. The worrying signs from President Putin is, in his words, he seems to indicate no limit.
The Home Secretary said it was heartbreaking meeting Ukrainians in Poland forced from their homeland. It's as she launches the Ukrainian Family Scheme, which allows anyone settled in the UK to bring their family. Ukraine is joining NATO's Cyber Defence Centre as a contributing participant. Its director says the country could bring valuable first-hand knowledge. The centre has already expanded its membership outside the NATO nations. Other news now. Australian cricket great Shane Warne has died aged 52, regarded as one of the finest bowlers of all time. His management said in a statement that he died of a suspected heart attack at his villa in Thailand. The news is the second devastating blow for Australian cricket within 24 hours, with fellow great Rod Marsh also dying today, having suffered a heart attack last week. Former England and Yorkshire cricketer Sir Geoffrey Boycott told GB News Warne transformed cricket and said he's one of the greatest bowlers of all time.
If you had to pick players who have transcended above greatness, I would say people like Bradman, Gary Sobers and him. He had a fierce determination to win. He had great skill, great personality with it. And my best compliment I could pay him was say, I wish I'd have been able to bat against you. He said, really, Jeffrey? I said, yeah, not because I think I would have played easily, because I never faced anybody as great as you.
So Geoffrey Boycott speaking there. Well, this is GB News on TV, online and DAB+ radio. Now, though, let's get straight back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Good evening, it's Friday the 4th of March and you are listening to and watching Mark Dolan tonight. We've got a massive Friday night show for you. You won't want to miss a second. I'll bring you more reaction to the shocking and sudden death of Shane Warne. We'll speak to a fellow cricket legend later in the hour. My Mark Meets guest is the Telegraph's sacked cartoonist Bob Moran, one of the few artists to speak out against lockdowns and vaccine mandates. Take a look at some of his amazing works of genius. There he is, of course, drawing an image of the truckers protest in Canada, and of course more images around COVID measures. He's got the most amazing story to tell. Why did he lose his job? He's live in the studio at 10:05. Plus my alternative news headlines this evening. That's my satirical take on the day's big stories. Tonight featuring Sir Gavin Williamson. That's right, you heard me. Sir Gavin Williamson. Find out all about that at 10:03, straight after the 10 o'clock headlines. Another great British game show's happening. Vladimir Putin loves a big desk, we know that. So we'll be looking at items of furniture from the movies and TV. Also, I want to hear from you throughout the programme, mark@gbnews.uk. You know the best bit of my show is when you get in touch. A busy 2 hours to come, and with me throughout, my amazing panel. We have commentator and broadcaster Portia Berry-Kilby, presenter and journalist Andre Walker, and commentator, broadcaster and all-round entertainer Sam Dowler. We've got the dream team tonight. I am so excited. And remember, we don't do boring, not on my watch. It's Friday night, so uncork something Mediterranean or fire up the kettle and tear open the Battenberg cake and let's get to work. Welcome to the show. Now, congratulations to Paulette Hamilton, MP. She has won the Erdington by-election for Labour. Her leader, Keir Starmer, tweeted the following. Congratulations to Paulette Hamilton, Labour's new MP for Birmingham Erdington and the city's first black MP. You've made history as a dedicated community champion. I know that you will bring security, prosperity and respect to the people of Erdington. Fantastic stuff, great achievement and a great story for her. Now, our brilliant reporter, Balvinder Sidhu, was hugely looking forward to interviewing this new MP, who, by the way, attended a panel event in 2015 entitled The Ballot or the Bullet? Does Your Vote Count? Where she expressed views which appeared to suggest she was torn between the democratic system and what she calls an uprising. A brilliant story brought to you and broken by our very own Tom Harwood. The ballot or the bullet, eh? Well, our own Balvinder was given the bullet by this new MP. Take a look at this tweet from our very own Balvinder. Labour refused GB News an interview with Erdington by-election winner Paulette Hamilton. I was told earlier in the evening by Labour's Steve McCabe that they won't talk to us. That's right, folks, you heard this right. They won't talk to us, but she did speak to all other media outlets. So I don't know why the Labour Party have refused an interview with GB News, a national current affairs network focused to a huge extent on British politics. And most importantly, a channel watched by up to 2 million people a week. In fact, I'm normally beating Sky News about now. Who knew? So why this rejection? Does the Labour Party not want to hear all voices? Is the Labour Party, famously keen on diversity, less keen on diversity of opinion? Do they want to cancel this new voice in UK broadcasting? They certainly cancelled that interview and my brilliant colleague, Balvinder. I've got so many questions, folks, because in my view, if somebody cancels GB News, if somebody throws shade at GB News, they're cancelling you, and they're throwing shade in your direction too. We do things a bit differently here at GB News. I'm delighted to say that many of you have called us a breath of fresh air. We're unashamedly patriotic. There's my mug. We accept that whilst there may be bumps in the road, Brexit will ultimately bring huge opportunities. I'm certain myself it will be a roaring success. We want the Channel migrant crisis sorted and the business model of evil gangsters broken once and for all, and we want to see an end to what is ultimately a humanitarian crisis in the Channel. We wouldn't mind confirming basic biological facts. You can identify however you like and should be acknowledged and respected for that, but there are just two biological sexes. Don't take my word for it. Those are the very words of one of the greatest fertility experts in the world, Professor Robert Winston. There he is, an absolute legend. Perhaps the Labour Party will cancel him next. I want to hear all voices on my show, and we want to hear all voices on this channel. So I would warmly invite the Labour Party to reconsider this decision and grant Balvinder her interview with the victorious Paulette Hamilton. And I'd love to extend an invitation to Sir Keir Starmer himself to appear on this show and be my Mark Meets guest, which, as you know, is the flagship interview slot on this programme. I do hope he will accept. I guess like most people on the national airwaves, I enjoy a small degree of influence. I'm certainly here to spark a debate. Perhaps the Labour leader might like to catch my eye, given the fact that I have voted for every major party in my life. I'm a floating voter, and on multiple occasions I have voted Labour. I'd love to know what he's going to do to secure my vote at the next election. Or does that not matter? Is that not a concern of Sir Keir's? And all of the votes of the people watching GB News, watching this programme as we speak. I'm normally beating Sky about now. Does it matter? Does it matter to Labour? Here's the thing. If Labour cancels GB News, it is cancelling you. And I don't know why. Perhaps it doesn't like you. Perhaps it judges you. Perhaps it doesn't want your vote. But for the sake of our great democracy, I hope that's not the case. And I look forward to being proved wrong. Sir Keir, over to you. Sir James Dyson, billionaire inventor of the Dyson vacuum cleaner, has warned that the home working revolution is damaging productivity and killing collaboration, causing British businesses to fall behind global competitors. Writing in the Telegraph newspaper, Sir James cautioned that the economy cannot afford such a lackadaisical approach from the government after it proposed legislation that gives all employees the right to request flexible working when they start new jobs. Dyson accused ministers of trying to decide for businesses and ignoring the potential damage done to firms. Now, I trust the words of James Dyson. He only wants the best for this country. I'm an unashamed fan of the guy. This incredible inventor who backed Brexit has generated countless high-quality engineering jobs in this country. He's been a flag bearer for Great Britain PLC, and he pays over £120 million a year in personal tax to the UK Treasury. And his products are, in my view, pricey but brilliant. Now, working from home has suited many people. So many of you have told me on this programme via email that it's been a game changer, especially if you've got kids, if you own a pet, and of course nobody misses the enormous cost of getting to work by bus, rail or car. I wouldn't begrudge anyone the savings that they've made. And it's clear that in terms of the office, as in so many other aspects of life, things will never go back to the way they were in 2019. More's the pity. Of course, some jobs just don't need to be done in an office. Many favour a hybrid option, perhaps 3 days in the office and 2 at home. But it's important that we understand that working from home comes at a price. 12 billion quid a year, according to Dyson, in terms of cost to the economy. Although I think you could hoover up many extra potential unseen costs from people working from home. Many people's accommodation at home is not suitable for home working. People have got crap Wi-Fi, noisy housemates, an uneven rickety desk. Plus, it costs about £500,000 a day to heat your home at this moment in time. Going into a warm office this winter looks like it's worth the rail fare itself. Dyson also talks about creativity, people interacting, bouncing ideas off each other, reading body language, having a laugh. Zoom meetings are all well and good, but in terms of the office, it's the unplanned encounters as you bump into a colleague in the corridor, or when you put your head round the door of your boss's office with a random thought. And what about mental health? Colleagues are friends, from my experience, and if you go into the office, you have that support bubble. You can talk about work issues, problems you've got, and have a right old natter at the water cooler about last night's Coronation Street. Or what about that spontaneous visit to the pub after work to unwind with teammates? The team jog around the park at lunchtime, the Secret Santa gifts, the birthday cake in the office, showing new employees how the printer works and where the staplers are kept. And if we're going to talk about office life, what about those stolen romantic glances with Sandra from sales or Alan in accounts? He's quite the dish, is our Alan. And let's not forget all of the businesses around our offices that rely on that lunchtime trip to Pret, Costa or Sainsbury's for their much-loved meal deals. I think the civil service and the public sector should lead the way back to bricks and mortar working to set an example. More office-based work would surely improve customer service, which is now so bad, always because of due to COVID. Have you heard those words? Due to COVID. That wretched excuse, due to COVID, must be consigned to the dustbin of history. Endless working from home is a bad deal for workers, a bad deal for businesses, a bad deal for the economy, and a bad deal for the society that we live in. The man behind the bagless vacuum cleaner, James Dyson, is right. Home working sucks. And let me be honest with you, this studio is an absolute mess. Let's clean it up, shall we? Can't be too careful. Well, let's go back to that story of GB News being cancelled. We can speak to Balvinder Sindhu now, who joins us after a fantastic night shift covering that by-election. Balvinder, great to have you on the show.
Yeah, good evening, Mark.
So tell me what exactly happened, because, of course, we had the announcement of a Labour MP holding that seat, and you expected to be granted an interview. What actually happened?
Well, I mean, I interviewed Paulette Hamilton last week ahead of the by-election for a preview piece, which I did on all the sort of main candidates, which aired on Wednesday on GB News. And, she came across as a warm and personable character. So, of course, at the end of the night when she won, along the rest of the media present at the by-election, I expected an interview with her. But I was told early on in the evening that they won't be talking to GB News because of Harwood, meaning Tom Harwood, our reporter, and what he aired a couple of days ago about those comments she made in 2015. So I didn't give up because I am a journalist, and ultimately, my job is to get that interview. So I did continue to try, but I was told, no, we're not going to be speaking to GB News. And I must admit, I was disappointed because I credit myself as a hardworking journalist who's trying to get, her voice represented on our channel. But, I was told they don't want to speak to GB News. And I just think as a political party that, they shouldn't really be picking and choosing which media outlets they speak to. And I would say that for all political parties. I mean, this isn't a problem just for GB News. I have seen politicians fail to go on other channels and speak up about issues that they've been pulled up on. I mean, I'm really pleased for Paulette Hamilton. She is the city's first Black MP. Birmingham is a diverse city, so it's great to see her representing, underrepresented community. However, she is now in public office. She's an MP. MPs will get pulled up on things that they've said in the past. And, rather than avoiding the question, Paulette, come onto the show, talk to us. If you feel your words were taken out of context or misrepresented, you have the opportunity to share your views and to expand on what exactly it is that you said. By avoiding the question, you are therefore, almost leaving people open to more questions rather than answers. And, this is unfortunately a situation that I see with lots of politicians avoiding the question. And I think that we need more openness, transparency, and honesty in our politics.
Has there been any movement from the Labour Party since this vetoing of an interview with a new MP?
I mean, for me, I haven't, I was on a night shift, so I haven't been trying to attempt any further interviews. But, I've seen a couple of other broadcasters speak to, GB News aired an interview with Keir Starmer where he was asked about those comments and he avoided the question. It's something that isn't necessarily going to go away. I mean, that footage that Tom Harwood presented a couple of days ago isn't necessarily going to disappear. So it is, it will potentially come under further scrutiny in the days to come. We are in a situation where we are a channel, we exist, we're not going anywhere. I find it disappointing when people don't want to speak to us, because ultimately we are just trying to do our jobs as reporters on the road, on the ground, representing the constituents in these areas and telling their stories. I mean, when you fail to speak, you're then failing to get your voice heard, ultimately. We're not always going to agree. I agree with you on one thing. There should be diversity of opinion, as well as diversity in other ways. But I mean, ultimately it's an opportunity, and it's disappointing, but it's not, like I said, it's not an issue that is exclusive to GB News. Other political parties, haven't appeared on other channels when they've been asked to.
Well, Balvinda, you, I think, represent the issues that really matter to our viewers in the Midlands so brilliantly. I loved your coverage of the by-election, and I'm sure that Labour, following the furore after this cancellation, will think twice before saying no to any future interviews. Here's hoping, because our viewers in the Midlands deserve better. Balvinda, do join us again soon. Our fantastic Midlands correspondent, Balvinda Sindhu. Delighted now to bring our panel in to react to my big opinion monologue. Columnist Andre Walker, political commentator for Young Voices UK, Portia Berry-Kilby, and journalist and broadcaster Sam Dowler. Sam, is it time we got back to the office and saved the economy?
I think actually there is a space for sort of hybrid working, maybe 2 days a week at home, 3 days in the office, chop and change. Because I think the days of, I don't remember ever going for a run at lunchtime, Mark, I'm not going to lie. But I think
your body's a temple, Sam, I'm told.
Temple of Doom. I just think that the days of everybody being in the office together are over, and it needed to change anyway. Flexible work hours needed to change. There's never been any need for huge amounts of traffic on the road, and just before 9 o'clock and then at 5 again. So flexible hours, working from home, etc. I think every company needs to come up with the right balance for their employees and for them.
But Sam, this idea of the hybrid approach, where it's 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, what that really means in plain English is that's 2 days of loose women, banana bread and white wine at 3 in the afternoon.
I mean, I wouldn't have white wine at 3 in the afternoon, maybe 4. But no, I think obviously, but some people really work well with working from home, especially parents who have to look after the kids or pick up the kids at 3:30, etc. These things are really helpful. So we're living in a changed world since COVID, and we have to take away the best bits from that rather than moan and say, things have to be how they used to be when they will never go back to that.
Portia Berry-Kilby, the issue we've got is that working from home may suit many people, including parents and pet owners, but it costs the taxpayer and it will potentially impact the economy in the long term. That is certainly the view of James Dyson.
Very much so, and it's undeniable that you do spend more money when you're out and about and you have to commute. But I think also it's worth noting that's the hybrid method. The worst thing is that then you have hybrid meetings, and we've always been in those things and it never works. The connection isn't right. You're talking to people in the room, talking to people online. I think that's one of the biggest drawbacks of the hybrid method, because then you're useless at home and you're useless in the office too.
Andre Walker, do we need to get back to work, smell the coffee and save the economy?
I do think we do, but I'll tell you something, we also need to be flexible. Do you know, all these people who complain about 0 hours contracts, I put myself through university on a 0 hours contract because the flexibility cut both ways. And I think that's the important thing. What we shouldn't do is use this as an opportunity to just abuse people. As long as the deal is on both sides, I'm pretty happy with it. But Mark, can I just say something about what you said about the Birmingham-Erdington by-election? Let me tell you, the video that Tom Harwood showed was a now Member of Parliament talking about the very serious criminal offence that we've all alleged for years of families forcing their relatives to sign a postal vote and then voting on their behalf. If she has information that proves that people are committing that offence, she should come on the Tom Harwood show and talk about it. I don't know whether she's involved or not involved, and I'm not interested, but that video was about a serious criminal offence that denies people the vote in the north of England, and that is an extremely important issue.
OK, we'll continue this conversation after the break. Also, in the big question, should Britain go for a universal basic income? Should people that don't have a job and who are on benefits receive a flat rate income every month? What do you think about that? Should that be the way that we tackle poverty, or does it create a generation of layabouts? I'd love your views. Mark at gbnews.uk. Plus, my Mark Meets guest at 10:05 is Bob Moran, who is the sacked Telegraph cartoonist, one of the few artists in the course of this pandemic speaking out against COVID measures. Plus, my alternative news headlines at 10:03, my satirical take on the day's big stories, and another great British game show. So much to get through. See you after this.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I'll get to your emails very shortly, but following the success of the furlough scheme, which, notwithstanding its huge cost, has been credited with saving thousands of businesses and potentially millions of jobs. So here's the question tonight. Should Britain replace its complex and Byzantine welfare system with a universal basic income, essentially paying every member of society that's out of work and on benefits a flat rate amount every month, effectively a salary from the state? Is this a genius idea that will eliminate inequality and poverty, or is it a policy that is basically an expensive white elephant which will foster a culture of laziness and dependence? Well, let's get a variety of views on this. To debate the issue, I'm delighted to welcome Emily Fielder, ASI Head of Communications, and Alfie Sterling, Chief Economist at the New Economics Foundation. Emily, if I can start with you. This idea of a universal basic income was tried in Finland, and it seems like they've scrapped the idea. What's your view?
Hi, Mark. Well, thank you very much for having me on the programme. So there are kind of two ways that we could implement a universal basic income. So the first would basically sort of be what you're talking about before, like an unconditional sum of money that's paid to everyone. Or you could actually have something which we might call a negative income tax. And what this essentially would do would taper away as the recipient's earnings rise, even if they start on zero. So I think it's important to note there are several really good benefits to this idea. Firstly, as you said, it guarantees a minimum standard of living for everyone, and actually means that fewer people will currently fall through the gap. It would also address in-work poverty in a way that the current system doesn't. So I would argue our existing welfare system is very much designed for a world in which finding a job would be enough to give most people a tolerable standard of living. But I would say this isn't actually currently the case due to the cost of living crisis, especially due to inflation and energy price rises. And also it would massively minimise administration and compliance costs. And you're right to say that there have been quite a few trials, for example, in Finland, and this had some really interesting results. So actually what it found is it neither incentivised nor disincentivised people to work. So in some cases there were drops in working hours, but actually this tended to be from either single mothers or from people finding jobs that they found to be more fulfilling. So people were happier, and again, like you said, they were lifted from poverty. But what it also did find is that, yes, so people were happier and were lifted from poverty, which I think would be a really great thing.
Alfie Sterling, is Britain ready for furlough light?
Well, I think basic incomes, as Emily was saying, there's many different varieties, many different forms, and it's you have to talk about this in terms of across the piece of the different options on the table. I happen to think that universal payments do have a role in the system. I mean, we've got to remember, this isn't revolutionary. We already have universal payments for children and have done now for a number of decades. It's a long established payment in the UK welfare system. It's only more recently that we've introduced a complex tax arrangement to try and claw some of that back. So universal payments are not new. And it's worth just picking up, Mark, as well, one of the points you made at the top. A universal basic income isn't just there to be paid to unemployed. It's there to be paid to everyone. That's the point. It's universal. And the advantages there are things like reducing stigmatism. It does bring some simplicity for those payments. But it also, I think, crucially, means that everybody is on the system, which means you can also apply top-ups and get money to people faster when they need it to meet their needs. In terms of whether I think you can eradicate poverty with a universal basic income or a negative income tax, I think in the end you can't do everything with one lever. You will need different answers for different problems. You know, not every family is the same. The same level of payment that might keep a single adult living on their own in a flat out of poverty is not the same payment that would keep a 5-person family, perhaps with some disabled people in it, out of poverty. So you have to have bespoke arrangements somewhere, but certainly there's a role for strengthening the universal payments in the UK system.
Emily Fielder, with UK national debts above £2.1 trillion, could we afford such a policy of paying every adult a fixed income?
Yeah, I think that is quite a big common concern. So you might know there's actually a trial of this going on in Wales at the moment. And under this trial, the proposed level of income is roughly around £1,600 a month, which is actually roughly the living wage, which actually is much higher than other trials. And that's actually something that would maybe contribute to the national debt and might undermine work incentives. But if you set it at, say, a lower rate, such as the minimum wage, I think that would be a much better policy idea. And the other point I'd like to come back onto is that, yes, it might be expensive to implement in the first place, but the amount of bureaucracy and money you would save on administrative costs for the DWP would be pretty vast.
Well, let's bring my panel in, if I may. I'd like to welcome Andre, Portia and Sam into the conversation. Andre, my concern about this policy, apart from its affordability and creating a generation of layabouts, is the fact that it's not going to be very popular among hard-working, tax-paying Brits.
Well, that ought not to be your concern. Your principal concern should be the way that it makes people redundant. It makes people give up on life. I have an uncle who's not the most intelligent man in the world, and when he went out to be a labourer on a building site, after he'd paid all of his taxes and done anything, he was only £1 a week better off. But you fast forward 50 years and he's got a house bought and paid for. He can pay for his own hobbies. He's not a millionaire, but he was never going to be. Had he taken the advice of other people and sat round drinking special brew and eating pizzas, he'd probably be dead by now. I think we have to start saying to people that the dignity of work is extremely important. People want to go out there. You know, we have laid waste to places like Sunderland. We've laid waste to places like Wigan. We've laid waste to places like Salford by telling people that social security, that welfare is a valid way of life. But I'll tell you one thing they won't do. You know something, Mark? The gaps between the haves and the have-nots have increased as a result of this lockdown, because the schools that gave people computers and home learning were the schools in the rich areas. The schools in the poor areas actually didn't operate fully. The reality is education pulls people out of poverty, jobs pull people out of poverty, tax cuts pull people out of poverty, and that's what we should be focused on.
Portia, surely a sort of common flat payment to every citizen would cut through all the red tape.
I don't really follow the logic there, Mark, I'm afraid. I think it will make people complacent. Why should you work hard when someone's getting by with doing nothing? I think it would be quite a pleasant life to have enough for something of accommodation and food and just potter around.
Portia, don't you underestimate the great British public? Perhaps if they have the security of an income, they'll start a business or take up some other interest, or perhaps do charitable work.
To that, I'd say you underestimate the value of work, Mark. And I think that it's important for people to have a sense of meaning, to have something to contribute to the wider community they're part of.
Sam, what would you say to 1,500 quid a month, no questions asked?
Well, I used universal credit during the first lockdown and a self-employed grant as well, and it was super helpful. I stopped it when I didn't need it anymore, and it was incredibly helpful. It didn't make me think, oh, I'm happy to sit here like doing, naff all. I wanted to go out and do stuff like everybody else did. I mean, I guess you would be resigned to having a certain way of life that was never going to get any better or any worse. And for some people, I'm sure that would be fine. But I mean, I don't think it's ever going to happen in this country, if I'm honest.
But Sam, why should, I don't know, a refuse collector that's watching this show right now, or a police officer or a school teacher, get up at 5 a.m. to go on shift in the knowledge that someone else is still asleep in bed after a big night down at Wetherspoons, all at the taxpayer's expense? Possibly even curry nights, which is always fun down at your local Spoons.
Well, I think both of those jobs earn more than $1,500 a month for starters. So I think, if in a case of disability or in a case of, you can't get to work or etc. There are cases to be made for both sides. But I think, as Portia said, the feeling of going to work and having meaning is more important than you can only sit about for so long. We've all done it for 2 years, for goodness sake, so we know.
Alfie Sterling, you're the chief economist at the New Economics Foundation. This policy sounds utopian to me. It also sounds expensive and inflationary.
So I think, trying to solve all problems with a single universal payment is problematic, and it would be extremely expensive, and it wouldn't be viable, in my view, long term. But that's separate to saying, can we put in place a proper minimum income floor for those that need it when they need it? I mean, to be quite honest, the evidence doesn't bear out some of the comments that your other panellists have brought forward to this discussion. We don't have a situation where higher payments lead to people not going into work, precisely actually for the reasons they gave, because people do want to work, and having a sufficient minimum income floor doesn't suddenly stop that from happening. And the other point here as well, Mark, I think kind of some of your remarks have implied there's a sort of a wedge of people that sit on these systems, that sit on these support systems and live their lives on them. That's just simply not the case. That people move on and off as they need it. It's a form of security for the entire nation. And it's not just for individuals, perhaps a few months where they're moving between jobs, they're trying to find the next one, they need to keep up with mortgage payments. It stops people going into spiraling into debt or other poverty traps. But as you were just talking about there, the wider economy, the macro economy, what a system like this does, an effective minimum income floor, is put money into people's pockets that goes back into the local community as it's spent, and it creates jobs. It creates jobs for other people, and that's how money circulates around. I can see, one of your guests shaking their heads, but I can tell them that that is how the economy works. That's how money moves around the economy.
I mean,
creates
look,
jobs.
to appear
would be reflationary, but it would create jobs and boost incomes.
To appear on a serious television show and suggest that there are no people who've been sitting on unemployment, disability benefit and other forms of benefit long term is simply ludicrous. The reality is there is a huge problem in this country with people who've been left behind by a system that condemns them to poverty. The poverty trap, where actually social security is more valuable than work. And my point was very simple, that work is dignity, work is your life, and work will make you successful. But look, the suggestion that the problem we're trying to resolve here is one or two people spending 3 months on unemployment benefit is nonsense.
75% of those that claim unemployment benefit claim it for less than 1 year.
So how many millions of people have been sat on benefits for the past 5 years? What is it, 2 million, 3 million? I haven't got the numbers.
Absolutely not. Much fewer
Alfie,
on unemployment benefits.
there are
only a million
generations
at any one given point in time. So
Alfie,
this is the problem. I think we're not reflecting what's actually happening out there in the world. I think you're reflecting possibly a bias.
Alfie. Viewers will tell you there are generations of people, of families who have been on benefits.
Absolutely.
So it's not to say that there aren't some families that are on benefits. It's not characterising the majority. And also we're already now lumping together a whole number of different systems into one conversation. There's unemployment benefit, housing benefit, in-work tax credits, people that are in work receiving benefits. This is part of this conversation we're having now. Disability benefits, again, a whole different category. Child benefits. So yes, of course, there are millions of people who receive some sort of payment from the state. But now we're now jumping around to try and prove different points at the same time.
Hang on. We're not jumping around.
Last point, Andre. And I'll let you come back, Alfie.
We are simply saying that the social security system in this country has crushed huge communities. Putting people onto disability living allowance because they're depressed, they can't get a job, is a genuine disgrace. And we need to stop this. We need to start improving education and getting people into work.
OK, final thoughts on this, Alfie?
Interestingly, actually, there are some real kind of synergies and complementarities between strong welfare systems and work. I mean, the most important one is boosting pay. If you empower people at the point at which they're entering the labour market to actually say no to a really crap, lousy job, and instead to wait until a job's a bit better, has better progression opportunities, better education and training opportunities, as your guest was actually, lauding, that will improve the quality of work in this country because you have employers competing for workers rather than workers employing for rubbish jobs. And actually that can have real positive effects on the value of work.
Fascinating conversation. Can I get final thoughts from you, please, Emily Fielder?
Yes, I would actually really like to come on what Alfie says and add that and talk about how the fact that work actually doesn't pay at the moment at all. Although the government did make a reduction in universal credit take rate, there is still a cut-off where additional earnings are cancelled out by the withdrawal of benefit payments. So actually under a negative income tax system, I would actually argue that there would be fewer or even no disincentives because the more income earned, the more income would therefore be kept.
Well, look, I'm deeply grateful to you, Emily, for joining us. Emily Fielder is the ASI Head of Communications, also a good friend of the show. Returning to the panel sofa soon, Alfie Sterling, Chief Economist at the New Economics Foundation, and my panel, of course. Lots of emails coming in on this one. I love your emails. You don't pull your punches. It's always tough love from my brilliant viewers. This is from Peter. Peter, thank you very much for getting in touch. Peter says, "Dear Mark, what a joke in terms of universal basic income. Next, they will want their backsides wiped. It's all another means of divide and control. Who's going to pay for this?" asks Peter. How about this from Robert? "Dear Mark, who do these people asking about having a fixed income for doing nothing think they are? Everyone I know says given the chance they would sit watching TV for a wage. People don't want the jobs out there. That's why there was a panic after Brexit about getting people to do manual work. Tell them," says Robert, "to wake up." How about this from Glenys? "All this working from home and people on benefits has created a load of lazy people who want money for doing nothing. Time to get back to work," says Glenys. So many more emails coming in. Let me finish with Paddy for now. "Hi Mark, 1,500 quid a month, no problem, but only once you've paid your 34 years of national insurance." Well said. I'll get to more of your opinions next. Also after this, we're going to remember the life and career of Shane Warne, legendary cricketer, died shockingly of a heart attack at the age of 52. We'll speak to a top England international after this. And don't forget my alternative news headlines at 10:03 and sacked Telegraph cartoonist, the amazing Bob Moran, live in the studio at 10:05. Got a game show as well and big stories of the day and tomorrow's papers. I'll see you after this.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A universal payment to every citizen in the country. Can we afford it? Would it fix poverty? Well, Morris says, "Dear Mark, would it go to pensioners?" I think that's the idea, Morris. It would go to every adult. How about this from Marlena, who says, "Good evening, Mark. I made the UK my home, and this is one of the most generous countries in the world. I find, however, that the sense of entitlement here and expectations are shocking. Your guest, Andre, is spot on. Education is key. However, I have 2 master's degrees, and when I started working in my career, I had a decent salary. But with all the minimum and living wage increases, I will soon be on a minimum wage myself. So unfair. on hard-working citizens. It's a scandalous and insulting idea. And how about this from Don, who invokes the Bible? Don says, what does God say about a universal basic income? If anyone is unwilling to work, he shall not eat. 2 Thessalonians 3:10. There you go. Can't beat a bit of God, can you? He always gets the last word, or she. Now let's get that Twitter poll. I've been asking you whether you think we should have a universal basic income paid to every citizen in the country, a flat rate of cash, £1,000 a month, 1,500. Well, 28% say yes and 72% say no. Well, thank you so much for participating in that. I'll get to more of your emails shortly, but some really, really sad news. Earlier today, the legendary spin bowler Shane Warne died of a suspected heart attack at the age of 52. The Australian took 708 test wickets, the second most of all time, in 145 matches across a stellar 15-year international career. Well, we're joined by Paul Nixon, an English cricket coach and former professional cricketer who played for Leicestershire and England. Paul, very, very sad news today. Did you know Shane at all?
Yeah, I knew him very well, Mark. Such a warm man, an entertainer, a gentleman, a very loyal guy to his friends, and someone that you wanted to be around. Just his passion for life and his zest for life was second to none.
Yeah. What about his physicality? I mean, was he a particularly talented athlete?
No, I think that's why everybody loved him so much, wasn't it? I think as a youngster, he wanted to play his Aussie rules football. He had a passion for that. He had a passion for everything. He loved his golf. And one thing about Shane, you know, he did everything with a great smile on his face. Very proud of what he achieved in the game, and you know, very humble away from it as well. He had time for everyone, whether it was a youngster in a dressing room who would have a bit of banter with and look after them. He was a megastar that actually had time for everyone, and that's why everybody loved him.
And what about his mentality? I mean, this guy was a born winner, right?
Yeah, he did it on big stages, you know, World Cup finals. He produces our nemesis for many, many years. You know, he had every English batsman going to bed at night thinking, staying up at night thinking, how the hell am I going to play against Shane Warne tomorrow? He mastered the art that only one or two ever did. To bowl leg spin, to come out the ball, any little bit that just flicks your fingers slightly wrong or your arms are wrong height when you deliver it. To get it right so consistently was mind-blowing. He was a genius. There's greats in our game, but Warne was the genius.
And was it inspiration or perspiration, Paul? I mean, was this guy just naturally gifted like a Lionel Messi, or was it blood, sweat and tears? Was it application?
Oh, absolutely. A bit of both, I'm sure. You know, he was always first in. He was a great pro as a youngster. And then I think he had a little bit of a wobble. I think he enjoyed pizzas and he enjoyed a beer. Well, he always enjoyed a beer, Warne. But I think that's why every club cricketer around the world loved him as well so much, because they could all see a bit of themselves in him. But, you know, a guy that had his heart on his sleeve all the time. He played with his smile on his face. He's admired and loved from everyone around the world, from rock stars to, you know, Sachin Tendulkar's and, you know, from Piers Morgan's, all the names around the world. Mick Jagger's sent messages. You know, whenever you come across Warne, is the energy and the passion he has for life. He had that on the cricket field as well, and that's what made him an absolute legend.
Was he a difficult personality in any ways, being such a serial killer? Was there a monstrous ego to deal with, Paul?
Yeah, I think that's what makes the very best sometimes the very best. I think there've never been a dull moment in the Australian dressing room, I'm sure. You sometimes see a lot of pictures of Warne with a different top on to the rest of the team. But actually, when they stepped over the line, they knew he was going to produce. And he produced day in, day out for 15 years of international cricket. And, you know, that's hard work, mentally tiring. We saw the ball of the century. Here we go, the Mike Gatting delivery. You know, Mike Gatting was a world-class player of spin at the time, and that was Warne's very first ball at Old Trafford. And it was like, wow. You know, the drift he got, the spin, the dip, the turn and bounce was quite literally unplayable. And that's why English batsmen went to bed at night absolutely petrified about him putting him on the back page of a newspaper when Warne's probably on the back page, on the front page himself.
Yes, I mean, that technique, is that something that can be learned in the practice sort of field, or is that, again, sort of a stroke of genius?
Everybody wants to try and master it and practice it, but very few do. And to Warne to do it that well, that consistently, really is mind-blowing. Test match cricket especially is a bit more of a batsman's game. Over 5 days, the pitch starts very green and it nibbles around for the faster bowlers. And then as the pitch dries out, then the spinners come into the game. And Shane just made that immediate impact. He grabbed everybody's attention straight away, and he never looked back. And he lived his life. He loved to party, and it was so sad as well that one of his last Twitter messages was to the great Rod Marsh, an unbelievable wicketkeeper, a young hero of mine as a boy, always wanting to play in the Ashes, as every young cricketer does. He wants to play in the Ashes, wants to play against the mighty four of Australia. Rod Marsh, their wicketkeeper, sadly passed away as well. And Warne's last tweet was actually saying how sad he was to hear about the passing of Rod Marsh.
About that, Paul. Also, let's be honest, I mean, he was a great-looking guy, very tanned. And let's talk about that hair. I mean, Shane Warne was showbiz, wasn't he? He was a guy that transcended the sport. He dated Liz Hurley. He was a celebrity.
Yeah, Warne was a rock star. I can't remember the band he played with now. He played on stage with one of the world-class bands. He's lived a really full life, and he's had no regrets. He's lived it, heart on his sleeve, as I say, and he's just been incredible. But he was a humble guy. He had time for people. That's why everybody loved him. But there'll be some great stories flying around that come out over the next few days. It's incredible. We always think of Shane Warne with a smile, and it's a tragedy that's happened. It's so sad. Warne would always want us to remember him with affection, and the stories and the smiles and the beers that we shared together. He was the hardest player on the field. As soon as you walked off it, he invited you into the dressing room, and he was a very giving guy of his time, his energy, and his knowledge.
That's wonderful. Finally, Paul, if we just talk about the fact that he was the archetypal Australian, and obviously he was an icon of Australian cricket. He was in a fantastic team, which will certainly have helped him to win all of those Ashes series. But just tell me about the extent to which he very much represented Australia and the very best of what Australia is.
Yeah, because he was strong and he's committed to the team, and when he played, he made sure he was vocal. I've been fortunate to play, and many English lads have been out in Australia in the winters, and the POM out there, it's a battle, it's hard work, and they're giving you a lot of stick on a weekly and a daily state. And Warne played like that. He was in your face. He was up for the battle. He was very proud Australian. And Australians loved him and always will.
Well, listen, it's been a privilege and a treat to have you on the show, Paul. I wish we were speaking under happier circumstances. I hope we get to catch up again in the near future. Paul Nixon is, of course, an English cricket coach, former professional cricketer for Leicestershire and England. Paul Nixon there, remembering the late, great Shane Warne. What a character and what a sporting icon. Let's now talk about a couple of the issues that were raised earlier in the programme. In my big opinion monologue, I was talking about the fact that Labour did not grant one of our correspondents in the Midlands an interview following the by-election there this week. Well, Leslie says, Mark, astounding that the Labour Party did not allow their most newly elected MP an interview with GB News. This is yet again another reason why I will not register as a member of this political party. I can now respond to their begging letters for my membership with speak to all new agencies, otherwise you're unlikely to have my vote. Leslie, thanks for that. Well, you've got mine.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A woman's work is never done. A very busy hour to come. We'll be hoovering up the big stories of the day with my amazing panel. I'm delighted to say my Mark Meets guest is with me in the studio. He's a handsome devil. He is, of course, the former Telegraph cartoonist Bob Moran. He's one of the few artists that has spoken out and indeed spoken through his work against COVID measures, or certainly highlighting their potential harms and impacts on people, especially young people. So Bob Moran will tell his amazing story at 10:05. After this, we've got my alternative news headlines, more big discussions with my amazing panel, plus your emails and another great British game show. We've saved our best till last. A cracking hour to come. But first, here are the headlines.
Good evening, I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has said the world is turning its back on Putin and his regime. In a video message on social media, Boris Johnson addressed the people of Ukraine and called Moscow's actions an abomination. As day 9 of Russia's invasion comes to a close, he vowed to increase sanctions if the violence doesn't stop.
The world is turning its back on Putin and his regime. Global corporations are severing ties with Russia. Participation in sporting events is being cancelled. And nation after nation is taking a stand. The vice is tightening its grip, and it will continue to tighten.
There's been Western condemnation of the shelling of a nuclear power station in Ukraine, with the US saying the world narrowly averted a catastrophe. A fire broke out at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the largest in Europe, after it was attacked by Russian soldiers. The Russian envoy to the UN claims the plant is working and the radiation levels are normal. Ukrainian refugees who have families settled in the UK will be able to apply to come to Britain for 3 years. The UK's initial visa offer was restricted to immediate family, but the scheme has been widened to include parents, grandparents and siblings. On a visit to the Polish border, the Home Secretary said it was heartbreaking meeting those forced to leave their homeland. 1 million people have fled Ukraine since the Russian invasion began. The Metropolitan Police is gathering evidence in relation to alleged war crimes in Ukraine. It's in support of the International Criminal Court investigation. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Russia is using increasingly brutal methods against civilians. UK Defence Secretary Ben Wallace says Russia is playing with fire.
Russian armed forces has in its arsenal a whole range of horrors that go way beyond capabilities that we would choose to have if you're complying with Geneva Conventions. The worrying signs from President Putin is, in his words, he seems to indicate no limit.
Australian cricketer Shane Warne has died aged 52, regarded as one of the finest bowlers of all time. His management have said he died of a suspected heart attack at his villa in Thailand. The news is the second devastating blow for Australian cricket within 24 hours, with fellow great Rod Marsh also dying today, having suffered a heart attack last week. Former England and Yorkshire cricketer Sir Geoffrey Boycott told GB News Warne was one of the greatest bowlers of all time.
If you had to pick players who've transcended above greatness, I would say people like Bradman, Gary Sobers and him. He had a fierce determination to win. He had great skill, great personality with it. And my best compliment I could pay him was say, I wish I'd have been able to bat against you. He said, really, Geoffrey? I said, yeah, not because I think I would have played easily, because I never faced anybody as great as you.
Sir Geoffrey Boycott speaking there. Well, this is GB News on TV, online and DAB+ radio. Now it's back to Mark Dolan Tonight.
It's time now for my alternative news headlines. And disgraced former Education Secretary Gavin Williamson has surprised many by receiving a knighthood. That's right, the man who presided over the GCSE and A-level exam chaos and caved into the teaching unions by closing schools is to be rewarded with the greatest honour in the land. Well, that got us to thinking here at Mark Dolan Tonight, which other celebrities might be deserving of a gong based upon the fact that old Gavo got one. Perhaps it could be Sir Piers Morgan. Well deserved, surely, for breakfast telly. How about Sir Brooklyn Beckham? An excellent cook, does a mean ham sandwich. How about, think about this one, Sir Alistair Campbell. And last but not least, Sir Fred West. Who knew? Anything's possible. Apologies to anyone offended by that. Sir Alistair Campbell was a bit strong. Meanwhile, sad news as the Neighbours soap opera is officially no more. That's right, Neighbours has been cancelled. TV bosses have confirmed the long-running Australian series will be axed after 37 years. One of its original stars, pop star Kylie Minogue, was said to be surprised by the news. Although that wasn't immediately apparent because her face doesn't do surprised anymore. One of the actors most devastated was the show's Labrador, Bouncer. Remember Bouncer? Who is now going to be looking for other work, sniffing about for other work, if you like. So far, he has auditioned for All Creatures Great and Small, Animal Hospital, and Rough Justice. Melinda Gates is in the news. She says that she has dipped her toe into the dating world after divorcing Microsoft founder Bill Gates, although it's hard to know what men will see in this lady that's worth $6.5 billion. She's going to struggle, poor woman. Vladimir Putin has been pictured once again at an enormous desk. He loves a big desk, does old Vlad. Many believe it's because he's paranoid about germs and catching COVID. Not so. We've got the exclusive on GB News. It turns out he enjoys playing table tennis after every meeting. Very good backhand. GB News star Belvinder Sindhu has been refused an interview with Erdington by-election winner Paulette Hamilton. She was told by the Labour Party they won't talk to GB News, but they will talk to other outlets. Well, we've done some investigating on this show, and here are the other channels, other than GB News, that have been granted an interview with Her Majesty's opposition. They include the BBC, they got it, we didn't. ITV, they got it, we didn't. Channel 5, Sky News, QVC, yesterday, CBeebies, Milkshake, Russia Today, I think they got an hour, ITV4 plus 1 hour, Blue Hustler, Television X, Playboy One, and Babe Station. And those are your alternative news headlines. I auditioned for Babe Station. They offered me a clerical role. It's time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, sport, showbiz and beyond, as well as those who simply have a big story to tell. Bob Moran is a multi-award-winning British illustrator and cartoonist who lost his job with the Daily Telegraph in October of last year after an online altercation with a top NHS medic. He apologised, but a few weeks later he was out of work, but not for long. Bob's incredible work deals with themes of politics, ethics and family. He uses emotion and humour to convey important messages, to defend moral principles and to invite people to reflect on what really matters in life. Between 2011 and 2021, Bob was political cartoonist at The Telegraph, and in the course of the pandemic, he created striking illustrations showing the impact of lockdowns and other COVID measures. In January 2022, that's basically just a few weeks ago, Bob began working for the Democracy Fund, a Canadian charity that defends and promotes civil liberties and constitutional rights. Bob produces 3 incredible artworks every week that are available free of charge to any newspaper, magazine or online publication anywhere in the world. And I'm delighted to say Bob Moran joins me now. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Mark.
Let me shake the hand of such a talented artist.
It's great to finally be with you. This is my 3rd attempt at getting here. I was stopped by technology and then weather, and this week the stars have aligned.
That's it.
Be with you.
But you certainly weren't cancelled. This is the home of free speech, and we definitely need to have it. Do you feel that you have tested the boundaries of free speech in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think part of the job of any cartoonist is to always push those boundaries and to test test where they lie and how far you can take things. That's part of what we're there to do traditionally.
And tell me about where your career started. We'll get to, the dramas of the last couple of years. But when did you first pick up a pen or a paintbrush?
Pretty much as soon as I could hold a pen, I was doing funny pictures and cartoons. And I spent most of my time at school drawing cartoons with my teachers and got into quite a lot of trouble for that until the end of school, where they were coming up to me and complaining that I hadn't done a cartoon of them yet.
Right.
I knew I wanted to be a cartoonist for a newspaper when I was about 12 years old. But obviously it's quite a weird niche thing to want to do. Nobody could help me. There's no set course.
And normally every paper has an iconic, legendary cartoonist, and you've got to wait for them to die before you can get the gig.
You have to wait for them to die, and then the idea is that once you get the gig, you stay there until you die. And certainly that was my career plan until. It's
interesting that you, like a lot of comedians actually, but this, through your, in your case, through your art, but you were sort of slightly mocking authority or challenging authority in your own way. I guess that was somehow the template of what you would go on to do.
That's always an instinct I think I've had. I've never. It's not that I've had a problem with authority. It's that I don't like when authority imposes rules that don't make any sense, and I hate hypocrisy. And hypocrisy is something I've always had quite an acute awareness of, and I've sought to call it out.
So how did you develop your craft? I mean, were you helped by art teachers, or are you self-taught?
It's a bit of both, I think. I mean, obviously, there's an underlying instinct there to want to produce this kind of work. And I think it's only recently I've realised that part of what I can do is inject emotion into my work. And whether that's emotion, happy emotion to make people laugh, or to move people, to even frighten people at times in the last couple of years. That was always there, but on top of that, obviously you have to hone your craft and learn a lot of technical
Did you
skills.
go to art college or anything like that?
I did, yeah. I went to university in Falmouth and did an illustration degree. But I basically looked at all the degrees in the country and said, look, I want to be a political cartoonist, and most of them said, I'm sorry, we can't help you. Falmouth was the only place where they said, OK, yeah, we'll allow you to do that kind of stuff here.
And how did the Telegraph gig come about? You spent 10 years there. I think it's a great paper. I'm sure you'll agree. It's actually been a rare journalistic voice pushing back on some of the COVID measures, at least drawing attention to the impact of lockdowns, the likes of Alison Pearson and Alistair Heath and others. But how did you come to work for the Telegraph?
I was actually, in 2010, I was at the point of giving up on the dream of being a political cartoonist, and I'd actually enrolled to do a teacher training course. And that summer, the Guardian cartoonists, when they were on holiday, got a few people who were interested to do some cover. So I did that, really enjoyed it. And then the following March, I heard that there was an opening at the Telegraph. So I just sent an email on the off chance, and got to go in and do a sort of trial. And that was that. That was the beginning of my time there.
And what about your politics? I mean, did they align with those of the Telegraph? Were you encouraged or asked to have a sort of centre-right perspective, or did you just draw the world as you saw it?
No, and I've never been a particularly political person, which some find surprising. But my approach had always been to try and remain quite neutral myself. And on any given day, I look at who I think deserves criticism. And I said that to the editor who gave me the job at the Telegraph, and I think that's what they like.
And surely that's what every great satirist, which is partly what you are, you're a great artist and you're a satirist and a commentator, that you just attack anybody that's hypocritical or in the wrong in some way, anyone in authority. I mean, I always look to the US talk show host David Letterman, would basically lampoon whoever happened to be president at that time.
Yeah, I mean, whatever side you're looking at, there are idiots making stupid mistakes every day. Yeah. So you can't let them get away with it.
Well, that's right, and you haven't let them get away with it, and you haven't let the media get away with it either. Let's take a look at this image that you have drawn of a cow with BBC emblazoned on its fur, although I think you have another version which says MSN. And the cow, for those listening on DAB+, the cow is in a field, lovely clouds in the background. It's a beautiful drawing, except that the cow is spewing poo into the eyes of the viewer who sat on his sofa at home watching telly. So tell me, can you remember when you had that idea? How did that one come about?
I think that I was trying to remember, because that was a while ago now, and I think obviously I'd been annoyed with the BBC for some time to do with its coverage. It was, I can't remember what the story was. It was a particular story that irritated me, and again, that's one of those ideas that I thought was maybe too on the nose, a bit too obvious. But sometimes they're the ones that work best. And you notice it's a male cow.
I mean, I think it would take a fool not to work out what the message is of that remarkable illustration. But what is your view of how the media have covered the pandemic? How they've reported it?
I think there's an instinct in the media, there's an instinct with journalism to approach every issue as a balanced debate. With two sides, make it very nuanced. For me, it was clear quite early on, actually, that this is pretty cut and dry. If you look at it from a moral perspective, there really is no justification for anything that's been done. And the media still pursued this idea, even a paper like the Telegraph and a few others have been good on this, of presenting another side. They didn't go far enough, I didn't think. And, one of the things I realised early on was what was happening here was a relentless propaganda campaign from the government, constant fear propaganda being pumped
supported by
out.
behavioural scientists and the so-called nudge unit.
Exactly. And what I decided was that rather than being a political cartoonist, I thought of myself as more of a counter-propaganda artist, if that makes sense.
There is anger in your work, isn't there? And that's not confected, is it?
No, I've been angrier over the past 2 years than I ever thought possible.
Do you care to... We don't need to get into the circumstances about why you left the Telegraph. I don't think they're guilty of, shutting down free speech or anything like that. I remember that you tweeted, or I think you quote tweeted an NHS doctor in relation to pandemic measures. She was offended, you apologised, but in your apology, you explained why you'd sent that controversial tweet. and why you were so angry. I mean, would you be able to share that with me? And it's in relation to your own family.
Yes. So my eldest daughter, Poppy, was born in very difficult circumstances, and she has cerebral palsy and epilepsy. And
I think it's worth adding that you felt, and your wife felt, very badly let down by the NHS in relation to the delivery.
Yes.
And that provoked you to then fight for your daughter forevermore.
Huge mistakes were made. You know, Mark, the thing is, I learnt a very important lesson that day 9 years ago in a very hard way, which is that when you know in your gut that something is wrong, something happening is wrong, and people you love are being harmed, you have to stand up and do something about it, no matter how futile it seems, no matter what the cost might be to you, and no matter how many people think you shouldn't do that. I didn't then, and Poppy paid the price.
I think the delivery team, midwives, nurses, doctors, told you everything's okay, the baby will be fine. You felt in your gut that it wasn't. This was your little girl, and your gut instinct was right, and she suffered major health implications as a result of mistakes made. And obviously, at that moment, you're a changed man, I would have thought.
Yeah, it completely changed my whole perspective on life. I mean, that happens when you become a parent anyway. You're never quite the same again. But it's changed my perception of risk. It changed my whole understanding of fear, the trust we place in institutions. And
experts?
Experts, so-called experts, yeah. And the importance of trusting your gut sometimes, you know, that's the thing, and not being afraid to stand up and call something out when you know it's wrong. And that's really why I've taken this line over the last 2 years, and why I have lost a lot. You know, it's cost me an awful lot, but I haven't lost my integrity. I haven't had to sacrifice my principles. Most importantly of all, I've not lost the ability to protect my children and defend their rights.
And your daughter has been impacted by COVID measures, hasn't she?
Well,
Whether it's mask wearing and lockdowns and all the rest of it.
Yes, massively.
Because your daughter does have certain particular needs.
She has very complex needs. She needs a lot of therapy that all stopped. She does swimming, riding for the disabled every week. That all stopped. School is really hard for her anyway. Obviously, the schools were closed for a lot of the time, and then they had masks. They were doing social distancing, washing hands. None of this stuff she understands. She finds communication very difficult anyway. We've actually taken her out of school now because the mask situation became too absurd. And to be honest, we didn't feel safe leaving her there. But, you know, the thing is, Mark, there are thousands of families like us. There are families who've had it much worse than we've had it. And the point is, they don't have a voice. No one is interested in listening to them. And part of the reason I made that statement after I'd lost my job wasn't just to contextualise the things I'd said. It was to try and make people aware of what's been going on. You know, how these families and these children especially have been thrown under the bus throughout all of this. The most vulnerable, you know, the most undeniably vulnerable people in our society are disabled children. And they haven't been having the care they needed.
Well, let's take a look at a couple of images that reflect that. We'll go through them, if we can, in order. First of all, your take on Partygate. Boris Johnson slumped on a table. He appears to have vomited on the rules, which are printed out on a A4 sheet of paper. Lots of drinks around, a few syringes as well, because you've had a few things to say about the vaccine and vaccine mandates, which we'll come to. Moving on to our next illustration, another absolute classic in my view, and this was your commentary on Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada's effective cleansing of Canadian truckers off the streets of Ottawa. Trudeau's making a speech, and a truck is about to land on his head. And how about this one then? One of the particularly resonant and iconic images that you've been responsible for over the last couple of years. Protect the vulnerable. It's a pensioner wearing a sort of baby carrier. I think it's called a papoose, a child baby backpack. The baby's in the front of the backpack. And it says on the backpack, farmer stab vest. So take me through the meaning of that particular illustration.
That's an interesting one because it's one of the few cartoons where I actually had the idea and then sat on it for a long time. I didn't put it out because I wondered if it was a bit too hard-hitting or perhaps it wasn't quite the right time. And images like that, they're not easy to create. It's quite a difficult thing to have to sit down and draw. And again, it's sort of motivated a lot by my own passion and emotion for things. It's absolutely not saying that the elderly themselves have chosen to do this. It's a sort of this, the burden has been, or the sacrifice of children to protect the elderly has been enforced, basically. It's been done
Been policy.
to them,
It's been policy, and I can't disagree with that. School closures, vaccination of young children, 12 to 15-year-olds, which was against the advice of the JCVI. Protect the vulnerable is, of course, the message that's underneath that image of a pensioner, quite literally wearing a child as a sort of a human shield. So what about the vaccine? You've drawn a lot of illustrations in relation to the vaccine. What's your view on it?
Yeah, I mean, there are several different layers to the vaccine issue. I mean, on the one hand, it was never my feeling that we necessarily needed a vaccine due to the severity or not particular severity of this virus, you know, with the IFR and the age groups affected and the underlying health conditions of most of the people.
We were told early in the pandemic that once the key vulnerable groups had been vaccinated, we could cry freedom. Those are the words of Matt Hancock, then Health Secretary.
Yes, of course, but then the other point I would make to people is that these people had torn our lives apart and not been honest with us and acted in completely unethical ways from the beginning. Those same people presented us with a vaccine and made all these promises about it. I think any intelligent person would have been right to be sceptical about all they were saying to do with the vaccine. You know, I think that there's a problem with the labels through this. To be labelled an anti-vaxxer, you know, it was already established that anti-vaxxers were this mad fringe group of people in society who were a massive problem for scientists and doctors. You know, an awful lot of people who are against this vaccine, who've decided not to have it, have had all their other vaccines. They've had everything else that's ever been offered to them. And it just stifles debate when you throw these silly labels at people, you know. And yeah, my feeling with the vaccine is that it's all part of the same tyranny. Basically, it's been used as a tool to restrict people's freedom, and time, you know, to an extent, time will tell just how A, ineffective, and B, potentially dangerous it might be,
as well as lockdowns and other COVID measures.
Yes, and what a lot of it amounts to, this is the key problem, I think, is that everyone talks about saving lives. It's all about saving lives. That's what we've got to do. But lockdowns kill people. We know that now, and actually it was obvious at the beginning. The government knew it at the beginning. What you're engaging in there as a government isn't saving lives, it's trading lives. You're saying we're prepared for these people to die because we think it will help these people to live.
If anyone's pushing back on that, I would draw attention to an NHS waiting list of potentially 14 million people once it peaks. I mean, if that's not going to result in a loss of life, I don't know what is. The University of Bristol told me on this programme that creating the biggest recession in 300 years will likely shorten 500,000 lives.
And everybody was on board with this. You know, most people, when we had austerity, were pointing out how many people can die from being plunged into extreme poverty. What's happened over the last 2 years is likely to be far worse than anything austerity did. And suddenly the same people are now denying that anyone will die as a result.
Isn't there another point, Bob, and we're clocked against us, and I want to talk about your merch, by the way, because you need to make some cash, and we're on national TV, and I've got so many loyal viewers who are going to help you out, I guarantee that. I've had a question which no one can answer in the course of this pandemic, notwithstanding whether lockdowns worked or not. And look, I don't think the government were being evil. They were panicking. They didn't know about the virus. And let's hope that we're wrong and it was the right thing to do. OK, I'd love to be proved wrong. No problem. My mind is open. And also in relation to the vaccine, the government are very clear it's safe to those to whom it's available. I'm triple jabbed as well, but I think we can both agree it's personal choice that's the key.
Absolutely.
But all of that said, why is it OK to wreck lives? Because that's the thing. I feel like we've had a policy where once viable businesses have been closed down, kids have been kept out of school, and people haven't been able to sort of interact with each other, visit family. In Australia, there's a woman in a Melbourne hospital who's got days to live and she can't meet her family because of renewed COVID measures. We're in a very
happened
cruel,
here as well,
cruel
of course.
Time. It happened here.
It's happened
So why is it OK to wreck lives? Because I feel that's what we've done.
We have wrecked lives. And
that's OK now.
This all comes down to what is the meaning of life? What gives life meaning? It's not simply the absence of a risk of death. It's not just longevity. It's not how long you can live for. It's not just about existence. It's about living.
Well, take a look at that then. This is perhaps your best-selling image. Never surrender your right to be with the people you love. Funnily enough, it's your least furious illustration, the least angry, the least contentious.
It is, yeah.
But it translates.
But in some ways, it's the most controversial, that one. It's
Really?
I still get the most pushback with that one. Yeah, absolutely, which is extraordinary.
So how many kids do you have?
3 now.
Got 3. And
Yes.
well, my warm best wishes to your missus and your 3 kids, including your daughter,
Thank you.
who you have been fighting for. And it must have been a very, very tough 2 years for her. And we wish her well.
Thank you. She's doing very well.
The other 2 as well.
Thanks.
They're very lucky. They've got a very talented and creative dad who needs to make a living now. I'm not going to lie. But he's got a website, bobmoran.co.uk, M-O-R-A-N. And actually, Bob sent me a photograph, and it's the one of mainstream media with the cow pooing on the viewer. I'm actually going to get a picture of that taken, and I'll tweet it out, and I'll send you the link to his website. But it is Bob Moran. It's that. You can get T-shirts for that. So tell me about the merch. Come on, let's make some money.
Yeah, so people were asking me for a long time if they could have T-shirts and hoodies and things, and it took me a while to sort it out. But now, if you go to my website, you can order T-shirts, hoodies, and sweatshirts with various different cartoons on them. And you can also buy original artworks and prints on there too.
There you go. Fantastic stuff. Well, of course, you know, other artwork is available, but it's great that we talked to Bob about what he does. His website is bobmoran.co.uk, M-O-R-A-N. Fascinating stuff. And his illustrations will cost nothing. Artworks can now be downloaded free of charge and featured in publications anywhere in the world as a result of his partnership by the Democracy Fund. Long live democracy and long live Bob Moran. Bob, it's been a privilege to have you in the studio. Thank you for finally making it from the wilds of the West Country.
Thanks,
and I
Bob.
do hope, come and join us again on the panel. We'd love to have you back. We'll put you up in a hotel. It's not great, I'll be honest with you.
Thank you.
It's cheap and cheerful, a bit like GBNews. Now, let's crack on. And we've got lots more to get through, including, I'm delighted to say, another great British game show. My panel return to look at the big stories of the day and your emails as well. See you shortly.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Fascinating interview. We'll get to your emails very shortly, mark@gbnews.uk. Now, several major international brands have started a boycott on sales of their goods in Russia. Among the companies to have withdrawn their services and product lines are H&M, Smirnoff, Apple, Facebook, Co-op and even M&S. Is this another important element of sanctions to diminish Vladimir Putin's support at home, or a worthless virtue signalling gesture that hurts ordinary Russians? What do you think about this, Portia? Because it just strikes me as a little bit virtue signalling by these corporations. Oh, aren't we such nice people? We're going to cancel Smirnoff vodka.
Yeah, I think it's a bit ridiculous, to be quite honest. And if you've bought the vodka, you might as well sell it and let people drink it.
Yeah.
Or let people decide if they want to buy it. And surely it's more powerful an image having shelves full of vodka and the gin all gone and letting people decide for themselves rather than it be top down.
I agree. I mean, look, we loathe what Putin is doing. I want him out of Ukraine. It's barbaric. I think war crimes are being committed as we speak. It's a horrific nightmare. But A, we don't want to hurt the people of Russia who didn't start this war. But also it's got echoes of Ben and Jerry's for me with the sort of migrant issue. Do you know what I mean? It's the big corporations just demonstrating how lovely they are, how groovy they are. Don't you think?
I think it is, and I do get the whole idea of showing solidarity, especially on this issue. Ukraine is being invaded. But there comes a point, and I think it's just a little bit on the nose, a bit virtue signally.
Sam Dowler, it's the gesture generation.
It's not a gesture. It's all of the companies that that we come to know and love. Like, the point is, of course, it is horrible.
You don't love H&M, do you?
I do, actually. Yeah.
I thought you were a bit classier than H&M.
I am classy as well, but they're good for essentials.
I got you. If I was you, I don't think you're anywhere below Zara. But that's just.
But I just think that it's like with the Russian, Belarusian athletes as well. It is. Collectively, if everybody comes together, which is what we're doing, we're making the Russian people see that obviously they don't want this, but you have to blame, Putin, basically. So they all turn against Putin. That is the whole point of it. So unless their lives are irreparably changed, which is what's happening, they can't even go out into the streets to protest this, but they certainly will. This is like you were saying earlier. It's the end of Putin, and at the end of the day, if their lives are so altered and like beyond all recognition that they can't get anything they love, anything they want, then of course they will have to rise up, and that is the whole point. The West want the people of Russia to rise up and push him out.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder whether everything is a gesture these days. I mean, look at Chris Bryant, right, Labour MP, nice guy, by the way. Well, no, he's a decent guy. I've interviewed him once or twice, a principled man. But he tweeted, every winning athlete at the Paralympics and every other sporting event this year should ask for the Ukrainian national anthem to be played instead of their own, so that Russia hears it time and time again.
Well,
What's that going to do? It's going to make a blind bit of difference.
Yeah, look, you and I disagree on Chris Bryant, and I'm fine with that because I don't sit up at night thinking about him. But I do think.
Well, he is the screensaver on my phone. I'm not going to lie.
And a stone cold hottie as well.
Now, I'm not going to say anything, but we all remember which photo, right?
Yes,
we all
exactly.
remember that photo.
Correct.
Right, Y-fronts. Anyway.
Very compromising position, let me tell you.
It wasn't compromising, it was Y-fronts. Right? It wasn't compromising, it was just bad. It was just bad.
Listen, there's a lot of photos of me floating around the internet. We better move on.
I will say something that I think you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I'm fine by criticising people for being woke. Yep. I'm fine with criticising people for virtue signalling. But number one, Vladimir Putin's government is a criminal operation. I think we all agree on that. How on earth can you sell to a country where there is no proper rule of law and it's a criminal state? Not so much of a concern for Smirnoff. Bear in mind that they're a Western brand that bought the name off the Smirnoff family.
Is that right?
Yeah, and the Smirnoff family.
Gutted.
The Smirnoff family continue to make vodka in Russia.
Please don't tell me Foster's isn't Australian.
No, but I'll tell you the good example. The good example is the Budweiser family of Czechoslovakia are now making Budweiser that they export around the world. They came to a deal with Allied Demek that around the world they call it Budvar.
Oh, I see.
Anyway.
That's right. Berghaus, the winter garment company, that's British, but they just came up with a German name because it sounded like German.
Well, Nando's as well. Nando's is not Portuguese; it's South African.
What about my favourite was Dixon.
Nothing's real anymore.
Fake news.
Dixon's own brand for years was called Matsui because they said people trust Japanese delis.
They all got a Matsui cassette player,
but
you can't get GB News radio on it, sadly.
but on a serious note, we rail against the cancel culture. We rail against virtue signalling. But you know, this is a war, and it's an unprovoked war. And we've got a guy who is, I mean, it's madness, going on TV claiming that a Jewish president is a neo-Nazi who is killing people on the streets. It's just bonkers, ridiculous nonsense. And do you know what? I wouldn't want to sell to them.
What can we, Sam, as British citizens do at this stage? I mean, do we vote with our feet? Do we, stop buying Russian products? Should we get on Twitter and send angry tweets? What can we do as Brits?
Well, actually, what we can do at the moment is you can book Airbnb in the Ukraine. That is one thing we can do at the moment, and people are doing it all.
I would say it's very, very cheap at the moment.
All over the place. But obviously you're not going to go, but it's a good way of getting money to the people who are there.
Is that how you do it? So that's a way of getting money?
It's happening right now, today.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's a brand new thing.
So you book a two-bedroom apartment
I'm sure
in Kyiv?
Yeah, basically for 2 weeks, wherever you pay the money that they ask for, or you pay above the odds. And loads of friends of mine have done it.
That's
it's all on my Facebook feed. It's a way of getting money directly to them without going through any other channel. But I mean, that's a very small thing we can do. But
sounds like a huge thing to me.
Exactly.
British Red Cross, of course.
And if you think about it, like every nation in the world was doing that, you're giving money to people that need it.
I'll tell you one thing, Sam, that we came up with a few years ago, which people do not understand the power of it. The Disaster Emergency Committee, this DEC, which most people are like, well, what the hell is it? It is really good. It has all the infrastructure ready, and when it goes go, which it's done now, it can fund lots of infrastructure straight away. And so it just makes it easier to know where to donate. And the D's, we'll put the number up. No, I'm joking. We'll put the number up at the bottom.
Not telethon.
I must say, full credit to the Mail newspaper and The Sun, who have run fantastic campaigns to raise money for people in Ukraine. British Red Cross, I'm sure there are lots and lots of opportunities.
By the way, well done to Turkey for sending the drones over very quickly.
By the way,
those drones.
Yeah, and I bet they're loving those German helmets as well. They'd be lost without those helmets.
But it's just great to see everybody pulling together.
Yes,
I know how you were saying, like, it is, might be virtue signalling, etc. But this is what I was saying was that if everybody is doing it across the board, that is what makes the massive amount.
Well, this is the thing. Vladimir Putin is a schoolyard bully. And by the way, there's going to be loads of people watching this show who are going to say they don't want Ukraine to join the EU and NATO. I don't want them to join the EU and NATO either. But it's about well, no, it's about free choice. I voted to leave the European Union because I believe that we're a free and independent country. If a free and independent country wishes to join the EU, but Vladimir Putin is a schoolyard bully. We've wiped the smile off his face. He'd stockpiled 350 billion in the Russian central bank, and he thought we'd never freeze the assets. Even Switzerland froze the assets. They've never done anything other than chocolate making and clocks.
Can we not use the metaphor? Can we not use the metaphor as oh, I'm Switzerland? Can we not use that?
Switzerland now, right?
Is that over?
Taking sides. Absolutely.
Why did you do an impersonation of Noel Gallagher when you said Switzerland?
Well, he's Switzerland.
Proper Switzerland now, me.
I don't know. You tell me.
So how do we see this playing out? What's our latest feeling about how this conflict is playing out? What do you think, Sam?
I think it's a disaster.
Are we in it for the long haul, do you think?
I don't know. I think it's a disaster for Putin, as we were discussing before. There's been some sort of stalling. They haven't surrounded Kiev like they thought they were going to be able to. And so I think this has been a disaster on every single front for Putin. And even though he's shouted nuclear this, nuclear that, like it has, his basically, like his cabinet, everything around him is crumbling.
Even China have turned their back on him.
Exactly, and I think it's over for him, either from his people or from the rest of the world. I hope and pray that it isn't going to be a horrible, some sort of genocide in Kyiv, and that basically we are going to have to sit back and watch them destroy Kyiv. I mean, I'm hoping that's not going to happen, because how long would we be able to sit by and observe that without doing something about it?
Well, yes. Portia, how do you see this playing out? What's your best guess?
I think that's fair. I think things are, I mean, they've definitely not been as successful as they hoped. Putin's not been waging war with all as he would have wanted. But at the same time, we can't say come the end that it's H&M that saved the day. I think that's just a bit preprepostious. We have to actually maintain
I think anybody was saying that. As I say, it was
Andre, you cheered up my viewers last weekend when you said that you think that Putin will have completely lost power within a month.
Yeah.
Or certainly lost this conflict. Do you stand by that?
Yeah, I do. I think the concern is, and this is something I keep banging on about. You know, I never knew this phrase, fire and forget, until this conflict. But these Javelin missiles that we're sending people, just to explain to anyone who hasn't watched me talk about this before, you roughly point it in the right direction, pull the trigger, discard it, and it will find the target itself. That cost Vladimir Putin most of his parachute regiment in the early days, but you can put them in. Here is one concern I've got, and I'm not as positive as I was last week. For you, Mark, I do some reading. And I was reading
God bless you.
The Red Army tactics from the old Soviet Union. And their tactics, believe it or not, are to send in lightly armed conscripts to start with and allow them to die, and then send the more heavily armed troops in later, establish a surrounding point 15 miles from the centre of town, and then shell it I was about to use the S word, and then send in your elite. Unfortunately, they have stopped 15 miles outside Kiev.
Yeah, deeply troubling and very, very worrying. Of course, we'll bring you the latest as and when we get it. After the break, shocking news. The price of a first-class stamp is to rise by an extra 10p to 95p. Almost a quid for a stamp. What's going on? So have we lost the art of letter writing? Is it worth the money? We'll talk about that. And traditional correspondence, and another great British game show as well. Lots of fun to come. See you in 2.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's time now to play the Great British Game Show, and today our game is called Nothing Really Mattress. Over the last few weeks, Vladimir Putin's freakishly long table has earned arguably as much fame as its owner's delusion. But how well does our panel know its TV and film furniture history? That's right, we're looking for you at home and our panel to spot famous bits of furniture from films and TV shows. We're going to play Nothing Really Matters. And let's start with a nice, easy one. In which film do we see these two flying on an enchanted magic carpet?
Aladdin.
It is Aladdin. Well done. A nice, easy one. That was a slam dunk there.
Point for that.
We do like to start nice and easy. OK, let's go for our next particular item of furniture. And let's have a look at what we've got here. Go for it.
Oh,
in which film do we see? It is Charlie the Chocolate Factory.
I was going to go for a lower low. Do you remember when they went upstairs? And
yes, I do.
The old lady going, "What are you doing to me?"
Is that where the radio receiver was kept?
The radio receiver was in the
Showing your age, boys.
Yeah, too right, just a bit. You could also have had Morecambe and Wise. Their comedy sketches were in bed together as well. Gorgeous. OK, how about this next one? This next item of furniture. On which show did Arthur Fowler have a bench erected?
Oh.
That's right, Arthur Fowler. He loved this place. That is, of course, the.
Well, he didn't have it erected, did
bench. Maybe not. Posthumously. Who knew?
He couldn't get it erected.
How about this? How about this particular famous seat? Take a look at this. Where's this from?
Game of Thrones.
Bingo! I've never seen it. Is it worth it?
Amazing. I loved it. I loved every minute. HBO.
How many seasons? Like 6 or 7 seasons?
7 seasons.
Amazing.
Isn't that the one that the Queen visited and she's going, "Oh, what a lovely throne," and everyone's sort of going, go on, love. Go on.
that sounds like a fallacy to me.
No, nobody said it. Everyone's thinking it, I think.
Too right. How about this one? Let's get our next particular rather special item.
Harry Potter. Come on, Harry Potter.
Nicely done. Yeah, I do like a trunk, actually. Occasionally people throw those away. I've got a couple at home. Discarded by the British public. Never throw those away.
You haven't put them out on the street.
Waste not, want not. How about our next item of furniture? And this...
Friends.
Is clearly Friends. There you go. You're absolutely nailing this, guys. How about this wardrobe formed part of a film series? Let's have a look.
Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe. I'll just guess now.
We're just struggling to get it, but it is the right answer.
It was all guaranteed to me.
It's Narnia.
What wardrobe is this? Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe.
You can't say the answer in the question.
It's not ideal. It's not ideal. I'll be honest with you. I'm afraid I think my team just assumed you guys were very thick.
Give us a challenge. Come on.
We've booked the eye candy tonight, but they're not exactly Brain of Britain. How about this balcony? Which film did this balcony feature in?
Oh.
Is that Moulin Rouge?
No, at last we've got a hard one.
I beg your pardon.
Arthur Fowler.
I'm saying Moulin Rouge.
Is that Eyes Wide Shut?
I'll give you a clue. Cocaine is involved.
Scarface.
Bingo!
Oh.
Bit too much knowledge there, young Sam Dowler.
I'm a film buff, what can I say? Not a
Straight in
cocaine
there.
buff, I might add.
His eyes lit up when I said cocaine. Who knew?
They were lit up anyway.
Now, let's finish with this. Now that we've had our mental exertion for the evening, big news in the world of postage.
Oh, come on. You can't be serious. Do you know what the problem is? Do you know what the problem is? You've run out of pictures, so we're now going to talk about postage stamps.
We are. We're going to talk about stamps now, but it matters because I miss good old-fashioned letters. Shocking news. The price of a first-class stamp is rising by 10p to 95p on the 4th of April. Do you still send letters? This got us to thinking about whether we've lost the art of traditional hard copy correspondence. Should we once again embrace letter writing? There's nothing better than a good old letter, is there, Portia?
Exactly, quite right. I love a good old letter. And we talked about this earlier, it's probably not surprising, but you get it in the mail, you don't know who it's from, you open it, something handwritten. It's beautiful. It's a lost art, which we need to bring back.
I mean, not all correspondence is good, is it?
Well, I have to say, sort of bring the tone down. My father died in December, and my mother has been going through a lot of just so much paperwork between the banks and everything. Everything has to be done by mail. So she's had to send off photocopies of my father's death certificate, left, right, and centre. Every single day, she's posting off another letter, and so she'll feel the pinch when it goes up. That's
Oh my
for sure.
goodness, you'll have no inheritance.
I know, but it's weird. Like it's the only things. I mean, I send stuff like via eBay, but I don't use stamps particularly. I use the
What do you put on eBay, by the way?
Various things.
Is it anything controversial?
I've got a lot of. Dan had a rather large Lego collection, so if any of the viewers want to buy some Lego, please contact the show.
Search your name on eBay. I would have thought. That would do it.
So I feel like, I mean, people very rarely would sit down and write a letter and send it through the post these days, through snail mail. But I think, but official stuff. I always find it strange that I get letters from the bank, and you think like I didn't need to get this, and you think like, why are you wasting your money sending, paperwork?
Tell me about your dear dad and Lego. I'm so sorry for the loss of your father in December. So did he do the Lego until later in life?
Later in life, he just decided that he loved Lego builds, and he bought rather a lot of it, I have to say.
Did he work off instructions, or was he an improviser?
No, he would buy like a lot of the Star Wars ones and the Harry Potter ones. We've got stacks and stacks of them at home, and he was like, "It's an investment, Sam." That's how he spoke.
And did he leave them? Did you leave them made, or have you broken them up?
Some of them are made. They're all like within their boxes. Some of them have been untouched. Some of them made. Mum and I were finding them in the loft, we hadn't even seen them. We didn't see them arrive, and even the postman, who I happen to know through, he's my friend's father. He was like, "Oh yeah, your dad liked a bit of Lego, didn't he? Like, always he's bringing him Lego," and I was like, "Oh."
It sounds like he was also buying Lego secretly, basically.
Yeah, he was and now we've got to spend the rest of our days getting bloody rid of it.
Yeah, too right. Well, look, your dear dad, in loving memory, he'll be very proud of you. You're his greatest Lego set ever.
Thank you, Mark.
He put you together, and he got that right.
I think that is a brilliant thing if you've lost a parent or lost a relative, to just be able to go through all that sort of stuff. I'll tell you something. I've been very lucky on. We've talked about my mother multiple times on the show.
Yeah.
She was incredibly old school. She used to write to her aunt on paper every single month, and of course all those letters beautifully handwritten. Because not in those days, but she was taught to write
back in the day.
Cursive.
Yeah. No, I think that's it.
Writing.
I think we might start. Maybe if you want to send me a letter, I'd love to receive.
Well, they send you loads. It's all negative.
Yes, exactly, all written in blood. How about this from Jeff on stamps? I love a letter I wrote to my GP 2 weeks ago to highlight some health issues. Sadly, whilst I wait for a reply, I've had to go private. That's outrageous. Declan wrote to the Queen last month. She still hasn't replied.
She will, though.
Everything's going up, says Adrian. We'll be paying for fresh air shortly. My mum used to say, well said, Adrian. Your mum's very wise. Mums always are. Thank you so much for your company. It's been a really busy show. Headliners is next. Thanks to my panel. You for watching at home. And I'm back tomorrow at 9. See you then.
Hello, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather updates. The weekend will have some spring sunshine, but also still a wintry feel as things remain pretty chilly, particularly over eastern England, where this weather front has been lingering through the day today and will stick around into Saturday. High pressure is toppling in from the west, and that will bring largely clear skies, and that will allow a frost, because Scotland and Northern Ireland temperatures already dropping pretty rapidly. There's that weather front still bringing rain and drizzle from North Yorkshire down across Lincolnshire, East Anglia and the southeast, lingering throughout the night. Elsewhere, most places dry, but those temperatures dropping close to freezing even in towns and cities. Rural spots across Scotland, Northern Ireland, maybe as low as -4 or -5. So a cold start here, but generally a cracking start if you like blue skies. And there'll be plenty of sunshine across Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, Wales and southwest England during Saturday. From the Midlands eastwards, though, expect fairly cloudy skies, and at times we are going to see some outbreaks of rain. In fact, for much of the day, East Anglia in the southeast staying dull and dank and quite chilly, just 5 or 6 in Hull, Lincoln, maybe up to 7 in Norwich. But further west with some sunshine, 8, 9, possibly as high as 10 Celsius. Quite quickly, though, those temperatures will drop with the clear skies once more over Scotland, Northern Ireland on Saturday night. The rain will start to trickle its way back across the Midlands, tending to peter out as it does so, but still, as we head into the weekend, a bit of patchy rain likely over the Midlands, maybe South Wales, Southwest England, seeing 1 or 2 showers early on Sunday. For most, though, Sunday is a dry day. Again, plenty of sunshine across the north. For the south, well, it won't be as damp for East Anglia and the southeast, but there will be a fairly brisk wind blowing. Temperatures on Sunday, well, we start sub-zero for many, up to 7, 8, 9 Celsius, but feeling colder in the south with that easterly wind.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and